Hey, Urban Explorers, and welcome back to the Urbanist's Lens. It's Drew here, and I'm joined, as always, by the insightful Clark, ready for another discourse on the pulse of our cities.
Hey everyone, it's great to be back, Drew. How is that new ramen place downtown worth braving the traffic for?
Oh, absolutely worth it, although, speaking of traffic, I swear I saw tumbleweeds blowing down Broadway. At one point, you'd think rush hour would be, rushier.
It's funny you mentioned that today we're diving headfirst into the very problem plaguing your ramen quest: traffic congestion. You've shared some sources with us, articles, research your own notes, all about how cities worldwide are grappling with this beast and what they're doing to tame it.
Okay, so we're talking gridlock, gas guzzlers, and the eternal quest for a parking spot. But where do we even begin with a topic this massive?
Well, let's start with a success story in the making: Dublin. You see, Dublin's aiming for a 40% reduction in traffic by 2028. Ambitious, right?
40%, that's like, poof, almost half the car is gone. What's their secret weapon?
There's no single magic bullet, but their city center transport plan is a pretty impressive arsenal. Think dedicated bus lanes. Imagine your bus zipping past all those cars stuck in traffic. That's what Dublin's aiming for, making public transport the faster, more reliable choice.
So you're saying buses will actually be on time in Dublin now? That's a city I can get behind.
Exactly. But it goes beyond just buses. They're also reclaiming streets for pedestrians, creating inviting car-free spaces. Remember that trip we took to Copenhagen? Remember how enjoyable it was to stroll around without dodging cars every 2 seconds? It's about making the city center a place for people, not just vehicles.
Okay, I'm starting to see the vision here. Less honking, more strolling, and maybe even a few more sidewalk cafes popping up. But what about those folks who absolutely need to drive downtown? Are they just out of luck?
Not at all. Dublin's plan focuses on smart traffic diversion, not outright bans emergency vehicles. Deliveries, essential traffic will still flow. It's about prioritizing who gets priority. And while we're on the topic of prioritizing, let's talk about cycling.
Yes. The two-wheeled solution? I've actually been trying to bike to work more often, mostly to avoid being that guy stuck in traffic.
Yeah.
So is Dublin basically turning into Amsterdam with all those bike lanes?
Well, they're definitely investing heavily in cycling infrastructure. Think dedicated bike lanes, safe intersections, and even support for e-bikes and scooters. The idea is to make cycling so appealing and safe that it becomes a viable option for everyday commuting.
It's interesting how Dublin's tackling this problem from so many angles. It's like they're playing 3D chess with urban planning. But what about other cities? Are there any other innovative approaches out there?
Absolutely. Dublin's not alone in this fight against gridlock. Let's hop over to London for a second. They implemented congestion pricing back in 2003, and guess what? It led to a 30% drop in car traffic.
Wait, so they actually made people pay to drive into the city? I bet that went over well.
Well, it wasn't without its initial pushback, but here's the thing. It worked, and the revenue generated, they reinvested it right back into improving public transportation.
So it's like a virtuous cycle. Make driving less appealing, invest in better alternatives, and suddenly more people choose to hop on the bus or the tube.
Precisely. And speaking of public transport, let's take a quick trip to Singapore. They're often hailed as having one of the best public transportation systems in the world, but the real genius lies in their integrated fare system. You can seamlessly transfer between buses, trains, and even taxis, all with a single card. It's convenient, it's affordable, and it incentivizes people to leave their cars at home.
Okay, I'm officially adding Singapore to my travel bucket list, but hold on, I'm already feeling a bit overwhelmed. We've got Dublin with their multi-pronged attack, London's pay-to-play roads, and Singapore's public transit utopia.
Yeah.
Are there any common threads here? Because it feels like every city is doing its own thing.
That's a great observation, Drew. And you're right, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. But what's fascinating is that beneath the surface, they're all grappling with the same fundamental challenge: how to move people efficiently and sustainably in a world that's increasingly urbanized.
So it's less about finding the perfect solution and more about finding the right combination of solutions that work for each city's unique context.
Exactly. And let's not forget that this isn't just about making cars move faster. It's about creating cities that are more livable, breathable, and enjoyable for everyone, not just those behind the wheel.
That's a great point, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we're not just talking about traffic. We're talking about quality of life.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting, because these solutions, they go beyond just reducing congestion. They have the potential to reshape our cities in profound ways.
My all ears, tell me more.
Well, think about it. When you reduce the dominance of cars, you open up space for other things. Pedestrian plazas, bike lanes, green spaces, all those things that make a city more vibrant and livable.
You know, it's funny. We started this conversation talking about my ramen quest, and now we're talking about transforming entire cities.
That's the beauty of urban planning. It's all interconnected.
So what's next on our urban exploration?
Well, we've seen some inspiring examples of cities tackling traffic, but it's not always smooth sailing. Next, we'll delve into some of the challenges and considerations that come with implementing these grand plans.
Ah, so it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There must be some roadblocks along the way.
There always are, but that's what makes this discussion so important. It's about understanding the complexities, weighing the trade-offs, and ultimately finding solutions that work for everyone.
All right, urban explorers, welcome back. So we've seen how cities like Dublin and London are taking on traffic, but let's get real. There must be some speed bumps on this road to urban utopia, right?
You bet there are, and some of them are pretty substantial. Remember how we talked about London's congestion pricing success story? Well, that kind of bold move often comes with a healthy dose of public resistance.
Yeah, I can imagine you're telling me I have to pay to drive in my own city, not exactly music to every driver's ears.
Exactly. People get used to their routines, and change, especially when it hits their wallets, can be a tough pill to swallow. So you need to think carefully about how you roll out these changes. Clear communication, a solid rationale, and maybe even some incentives to sweeten the deal.
So it's not just about slapping on a fee and calling it a day. You have to actually get people on board.
Absolutely. It's about bringing the public along for the ride, showing them how these changes will ultimately benefit them. Think of it like this. If you improve public transport with the revenue from congestion pricing, maybe people will actually want to ditch their cars.
Okay, that makes sense. But even with the best intentions, doesn't all this fancy infrastructure, bus lanes, bike paths, subway expansions come with a hefty price tag?
You're hitting on another major challenge, the financial investment required for these urban transformations. We're not talking about a new coat of paint here. We're talking about potentially re-engineering entire transportation networks.
So basically, cities need deep pockets to pull this off.
Well, let's just say it requires careful planning, prioritizing, and maybe even some creative financing. Think public-private partnerships, grants, even bonds. And remember, you're not just spending money, you're investing in a better future.
Okay, so we've got the public potentially grumbling about changes and city budgets stretched thinner than a yoga instructor. Anything else we need to consider?
There's another crucial piece of the puzzle equity we need to make sure these solutions don't just benefit the wealthy or those who live in trendy neighborhoods. Think about it. If public transport is only good in certain areas, congestion pricing could hit lower income folks the hardest.
Right. They might not have the option to just hop on a fancy new train line if it doesn't run where they need to go.
Exactly. So you have to design these solutions with everyone in mind. Maybe that means targeted subsidies, expanded bus routes, or even ride-sharing programs that cater to those without easy access to public transit. It's about making sure everyone benefits, not just a select few.
So far, we've been focusing a lot on the hardware, the buses, the bikes,
Right.
the infrastructure. But what about the software, the human element?
You're getting to the heart of it. Even with the most efficient system in place, it all boils down to whether people actually use it. You can build the most amazing bike lane, but if no one feels safe cycling on it, it's not going to do much good.
So it's not enough to just build it and hope they'll come.
Yeah.
You need to actually change people's behavior.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need to foster a culture that embraces sustainable transportation. Think public awareness campaigns, incentives, maybe even a little friendly competition between neighborhoods.
I can see it now, the annual Most Bike-Friendly Block Award, complete with bragging rights and a giant golden bicycle trophy.
Hey, whatever works, right? The point is, it's about making those greener choices. Walking, biking, taking public transport, not just an option, but the most desirable option.
I'm starting to realize this is a lot bigger than just getting me to my ramen. In record time, we're talking about reshaping our entire relationship with how we move around cities.
You got it, and that's why it's such a fascinating challenge. It's about thinking holistically, considering all the angles, and ultimately striving for a future where cities are not just efficient, but genuinely enjoyable places to live.
Welcome back, urban explorers, to the final stretch of our traffic talk. I have to say this discourse has really shifted my perspective. It's not just about easing congestion, it's about reimagining our cities from the ground up.
That's exactly it, Drew. We've
Yeah.
talked about Dublin's holistic approach, London's congestion pricing gamble, Singapore's transit utopia. But now let's zoom out and consider the bigger picture. What kind of cities are we actually striving for?
Well, for me, it's about creating spaces where people come first. Remember how we were joking about that golden bicycle trophy? Imagine a city where biking isn't just encouraged, it's the norm, where sidewalks are bustling with pedestrians, not exhaust fumes.
I love that vision, Drew. Think about the ripple effects when you prioritize people over cars. You free up space for things like parks, plazas, outdoor markets. You encourage those chance encounters that build community. Remember how much we loved that little cafe tucked away on that pedestrian street in Florence? Those are the kinds of spaces we need more of.
Absolutely. And wouldn't it be amazing to walk out your door and breathe fresh air, even in the heart of a bustling city? Reducing our dependence on cars could have a huge impact on air quality and public health.
You're spot on. It's all interconnected: transportation, urban design, social equity, environmental sustainability. It's about creating a system where all those pieces work together harmoniously.
It's funny. We started this discourse talking about my traffic woes on the way to a ramen shop, and now we're envisioning a future where cities are havens for pedestrians, cyclists, and maybe even a few ramen-loving rollerbladers.
Why not? The possibilities are endless when you start thinking outside the car-centric box. And that's what we want you, our urban explorers, to take away from this discourse.
Exactly. So the next time you're navigating the concrete jungle, or maybe we should call it the urban oasis, from now on, pick a moment to observe, to question, to imagine.
Imagine a city where the air is clean, the streets are alive with activity, and getting around is a pleasure, not a chore, where community thrives and public spaces are truly public.
That's the future we're all working towards. And it starts with each of us demanding better thinking creatively and advocating for change.
Well said, Drew. So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep your urbanist lens focused on a brighter, more sustainable future.